This gardening season was just alright so far. I mean, right at the end, we've had a big uptick in production. But guys, today I'm going to show you how to actually grow a successful garden in just a couple easy to follow along steps. By the end of this video, you'll learn all those steps and how they work. So without any further ado, let's show you. Now, priority number one is going to be mainly just housekeeping stuff around the garden. Now, the reason why this is really important is because it's going to really dictate whether or not your garden will be able to be, well, you know, surviving, as you know. Because if the weeds get way too tall in that garden, then they're going to be overshadowed pretty badly. Like with this row of strawberries here. The weeds got so intense it literally destroyed all of our strawberries. As for our plants over there, the weeds got pretty intense over there as well, so they destroyed a lot of our green beans, and probably the reason why my peas didn't actually come up this year, despite them being a relatively new package. So y'all, as you guys can see in this garden, there is a ton of stuff in there, and thankfully we keep it pretty well maintained, which is the main reason why right now there's not a lot of weeds. But even keeping it maintained on the outside is really good, but mainly the outside stuff is just for like making it look good. You know, if you like have someone over, you want to show them the garden, you want to make sure that outside is a little bit tidied up. But guys, that's one of the biggest things as to why your garden might not be successful, is that you're not maintaining it. Also, if you're wondering about these feathers, you probably saw the community post I put out last night. Rest in peace, Goldie, I guess. The next thing is I'd recommend getting an irrigation system if you've already had a couple years of experience with gardening. But for your first year or two, I'd recommend watering it by hand. And the reason why I say this is because realistically, you probably aren't going to know how to build an irrigation system when you get into your first year of growing a garden. Now, the reason is because, quite simply, it's a little bit complicated. There's different zones. There's literally a lot of different things that go into making an irrigation system. If you guys want to learn about that, you can click the card on the upper corner of the screen, which is a video from earlier this year, which shows you how we built our irrigation system in no particular order. But guys, this garden does have an irrigation system. We implemented it in our second year of gardening, which is around that time we pretty much knew at that point what worked and what doesn't. So that's why, in my opinion, I'd honestly recommend you get some of this stuff in your second year, but water it in your first year. Now, the reason why they have different zones is because of one specific thing, and that reason is because different plants require a different amount of water. My strawberries will get about 2 inches of water a week, while most of the plants in my garden earn about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water per week. That's because they need about that much water to be perfectly healthy. So, yeah, that's the main reason why that's the case. Now, the next thing is don't allow things to have free access to your garden. So, we do have a fence set up here, and our plan is to be able to make this look a little bit better by the beginning of next year. And the reason is for one particular reason. This fence, if I was, say, like a raccoon or something, I'd just be able to jump this, like that. You guys see that? I can just jump this fence, literally. Well, I'm not gonna do it on camera, but if I had the chest strap on me right now, I'd easily jump that fence for content, because why not? But guys, a raccoon could probably climb that. A bigger animal like a bear could jump it. So you want to make sure that your garden security is really part of the budget, because everybody usually gets a budget for their garden every year, and I'd recommend implementing garden security in that. We'll talk about that later on in the video. But guys, this right here is really important. This mesh right here is really important. The stuff on the ground here is really important. But next year we're going to see if we can cage this whole area up here, so that way we can keep the birds out of here as well. Now, next up, we're going to talk about the budget in your garden. Now, the reason why this is so important here, guys, is because you need to know about how much money you should be spending on your garden every single year. Now, it's less than I spend on the chickens every year. That's for sure. The chickens are about $1,000 to $1,500 per year, which sounds like a lot. But when you divide that into 12, it's a little bit less overwhelming. And it's also like, in the summer months, it's like really low. As for the garden, there might be some energy bills, there might be some water bills, you know, stuff like that. But in general, the garden pretty much maintains itself. Now, the reason is because when it rains in the summer, you're able to get that nice water that flows into the garden. But if you're in an area that's not like the northeast or the southeast or really anywhere except for the southwest, then you're probably going to be like receiving a lot of rain in the summer. So you probably don't really need to worry about watering your garden too often. But when it's getting dry, you should probably give them a little bit of water to make sure that they're healthy. But guys, in general, most of the money you're going to be spending annually on seeds, that's about what we mostly pour our money into in the garden, which isn't usually that expensive. I know in my area some seeds can go up to $5 depending on like their incredible, depending on like how good they are, you know, stuff like that. that's pretty much the entirety of it. Now the next thing you need to do is make sure that there's no issues in the garden. By issues, I'm talking about specifically bugs, like beetles and stuff like that. Mainly beetles. Potato beetles are destruction. They mean destruction, specifically for your eggplants. I don't know why only my eggplants are targeted by them, but hey, at least they're manageable with only one plant. But some beetles won't just stick to one. They'll go all out and attack every single plant in your garden. So that's why it's really important to make sure you're up to date on managing your pest control in the garden. And that's why I go into the garden very frequently, and that's why I document my garden very frequently, because it's just so convenient to go in there, see if there's anything on the leaves, see that I can pick it off. And now we're going to talk about one of the most important things in there is by using your resources to help make your garden life easier. Now for us, we'll sometimes use our chickens to make sure that our garden is doing good. Like sometimes if there's like tomatoes on the ground, we'll just let our chickens free in there for like a little bit and see what all they come out with. Obviously they're gonna be monitored so that way they don't get into anything else. We don't want them in our raw green beans, that's poisonous and stuff like that. And more specifically, I don't really want them getting into like the cherry tomatoes and stuff like that that's already on the branches, because that needs to be harvested still. We have chickens at our disposal, we have compost at our disposal. That's really useful, especially if you're like planting new things or trying to make sure your soil is good. There's a lot of things that you could be using as resources, and I'm talking about repurposing things as well, a whole lot. Now guys, I have something pretty important to say right now. If you like saw my garden and were like, yeah, that's crazy, but like I don't know what it really looks like, or if you're even just interested in the garden, guys, the video on the screen right now is there. It's literally my garden tour from yesterday. Not yesterday, well, the day before. I'm recording this the day after that dropped. So guys, I'll see you there.